Hey.
So good afternoon, all. Now it's my turn. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, and
Yes.
yes.
All
See you.
right.
Well done.
We're still missing one of our panelists, Dr. Rami Ahmed, but I have sent him several times registration link. Please forgive me. I'm still struggling with the Zoom platform. There are several other platforms, but let me assure you that Zoom is the most used one, at least in the ITU. In the R sector, we have decided on using Zoom. So without any further ado, thank you so much, and my apology for waiting that long. We have a very impressive list of panelists today. One of them is a leader in the region. The other one is one of my idols and mentors. Third one is one of my dear colleagues. Fourth one used to be my boss. And finally, Zaber, it's not a secret that I love your work on spectrum management. So let's start ahead, and thank you so much for joining us today. GTPRN is an initiative for few people who are interested in telecom policy. We're doing this work on a voluntary basis. We're gonna have a small publish issue in January. It's gonna have like some brief on the last three webinars we did have in December, plus some exclusive articles. Stay tuned for that. And frankly speaking, AI is a very trending issue. And I met my colleague, George Salama, a few weeks ago. And I was amazed by the progress in that field. And then I've noticed that His Excellency Engineer Belal, his latest articles and speeches are focusing on AI. And then I found that Professor Zaber changed his focus from spectrum management to artificial intelligence. And same applies for Dr. Rami Ahmed. So I told myself, let's take a break from spectrum management. Let's see what you folks, you are the expert, what do you have to say about artificial intelligence? And let's start with our prestigious speaker today. His Excellency Engineer Belal Al-Hafnawi is Commissioner and Board of the Regulator of Jordan Regulator. And I would invite you all to read his latest articles. Some of them are unfortunately in Arabic, but they really are interesting. And what is interesting about them is that this is a guy who's doing the regulations in practice. He's working for the regulator. He's not working for the regulator. He's one of the commissioners there. So, if I may, Engineer Bilal, I've noticed that in your latest, perhaps TV intervention, you focus about social media, and we all know that artificial intelligence has become an essential part of this platform. And I know you also an expert when it comes to cybersecurity challenges. So how can we protect ourselves? And I'm a naive when it comes to artificial intelligence. How we can protect ourselves and then make the most out of these new technologies?
Good afternoon, good evening for all. Thanks for your invitation, Brother Muhammad. And it's my pleasure to be among the prestigious speakers in this webinar. What you mentioned about artificial intelligence, everyone is still learning, even me, because the artificial intelligence is moving in a fast manner that we need to understand what's going on, and we need to take the right tracks in order to deal with the artificial intelligence. Now, as a brief, when we are looking to the scene about AI is moving very fast, and there is a transformative potential of AI that everyone is interested to have the benefits of AI, and at the same time, we will have inherent risks, that we will have hidden risks that upcoming to challenge us when we move toward AI. So we need to think about biasing that could be used by AI. We need to think about job displacement because everyone is worried about his job. And we need to think about misuse of data in AI, like deepfake and artificial videos, artificial content that it's built to interfere others or to make troubles for others. So there is a necessary requirement to have a regulation for the AI. Now, when we think about national efforts, every country is looking forward to regulate the AI. It's not a mean of classical regulation. We need to put like a borderline about AI and where can we interfere with the AI, what our efforts need to be done, what we need to work to address the challenges that we could have, as I mentioned earlier about AI. So there will be a wide regulatory framework about AI. When we start about from the scratch now, we need to think about what is the forward thinking about our nation, what is the actual need for AI. So the first framework that we need to think about for every country is the national strategy of AI. What is the vision for every country of AI? And what are the key goals and objectives of having AI? Is this development just a fancy that we need to follow the trend that everyone need to develop AI or to work for AI? Or there is a serious need that we need to think about it and we need to address the ethical and societal concerns that it will appear in the horizon. So the second important thing about the framework, we need to think about data protection laws. Now, we need to think how to protect the data that it could be used in AI. What regulations need to be done? How could we make AI governance? How could we protect the privacy? And how can we ensure that we still have the data security for the data used in AI feeding?
Engineer Bilal, I'm not sure if you're muted or you finish your intervention, but I cannot hear you. So I'm not sure if it's the case with the other.
Yes, we have lost his voice.
All right, all right. So let's move on, if we may. And frankly speaking, this is my favorite part, my favorite person to introduce. Professor Scott Marcus has never failed to impress me and surprise me. So his first seminal work on spectrum flexibility was the start of our dialogue. And he did a very seminal contribution, perhaps 15 years ago, along with Martin Cave and Gerard Bogorel. And then I was,
I was speaking, Muhammad, maybe the voice disconnected or the link was blinking. I'm not sure what happened. Did I complete the idea that I need to deliver, or you did not hear all the?
I think we heard it, Engineer Bilal, and we have moved to Professor Scott Marcus. But I will get back to you. I will get back to you. So,
okay, no problem.
Again, Scott surprised me because I knew that he was an advisor to the FCC chairman on internet issues. And then several years ago, I found that he's doing a hearing in the European Parliament. And the guy is very influential when it comes to Europe. Most of his travel is to Brussels for obvious reasons. And recently I discovered that he's not only an economist, he's an engineer. So sorry for the long introduction. But anyway, a very small part of his work focus on the influence of artificial intelligence on the future of work. And Professor Scott, let me ask you frankly, as a spectrum manager, should I worry about my job? As an academic, should I worry about my job?
Well, honestly, I don't think anybody on this call has to worry very much about their jobs. And that's really the point. Artificial intelligence and digitalization more generally are going to have an impact on jobs, on a lot of jobs. But those of us in higher skilled jobs, those of us in jobs that require creativity, those of us in jobs that require interpersonal skills, for at least probably during our lifetimes, we don't have much to worry about at all. Now, you've asked me to speak today about the impact on the labor market, so I'll really focus on that in my remarks. And with that, I would begin by saying that, you know, the idea that the robots are coming to take our jobs, it's not a new idea. The first article that I saw, or the first book I saw where it appears, was published in 1872. So it's been around for a while. The whole discussion really got heated with an article from two Oxford professors, Osborne and Fry, around 2015, 2016, where they did some actually very creative work and then concluded that 47% of the US workforce was at risk of being automated out of a job due to digitalization, of which artificial intelligence is a part, in a small number of decades. Now, needless to say, this raised a lot of eyebrows, caused a lot of panic. One of the US presidential candidates in 2016 said, oh, we're going to need universal basic income to support all these people who are thrown out of work. But what fairly quickly happened thereafter is that really a better analysis was done by Melanie Arntz at the ZEW in Mannheim. What she looked at was a task level understanding of how artificial intelligence and digitalization more generally impacts jobs. And there the conclusion was that while a lot of jobs get affected, basically the jobs don't go away. The number of jobs that might get automated out of existence look more like less than 10%. And I think almost all experts have come around to believing that this is closer to the truth. An American expert, the head of the ITIF, which is kind of a lobbying group for the tech industry, but Atkinson is really good. And the point he likes to make is that 200 years ago, nearly all Americans were farmers. Today, depending on how you count it, it's probably more like 3 to 5%. That doesn't mean that 95% of Americans are out of work. It meant that they're doing different things than they would have done way back when. The fact that these things were done more efficiently, that they were partly automated, really meant that people were freed to do other things. It also meant that there were productivity gains that boosted GDP, which meant that there was an appetite for more advanced products and services. So net, basically, this is a win, not a loss. Now, the remarks that our first speaker made, in his very excellent remarks, point out there are risks. But it's important when we talk about the risks to also remember there are also quite enormous opportunities. Now, when we talk about who these risks impact, most people assume, oh, artificial intelligence is going to eliminate the low-skilled jobs. The literature is actually pretty clear on this. The experience is pretty clear on this. Over the past 4 or 5 decades, automation, digitalization have mostly not reduced low-skilled jobs. They've hit people in middle-skilled jobs with relatively routine functions. Think about clerical jobs. There was a really excellent study, though, put out just about a year ago, a joint effort of the US Department of Commerce and the European Commission, where they raised the concern, or the issue at least, that the new technology, large language models and generative AI, actually won't hit the usual suspects. Instead, this for the first time implies a risk to high-skilled jobs. Now, did they get this right? I think at least partly, but not entirely in my judgment. If you think, for example, about lawyers who appeared high on their list of professions that might be impacted, I think what will happen with lawyers is that a lot of the routine search for precedents, especially in common law countries, and the analysis of precedents, routine things like that, can be automated now in ways that we wouldn't have thought about just a few years ago. But I think the creative part of lawyering, that's likely to stay. I don't see that going away. So what we have is a much more nuanced, likely impact. And remember too, a lot of jobs require not things that are easily done by the robots. They require interpersonal skills, management skills, human sensitivity, and also creativity of a kind that probably an artificial intelligence isn't likely to achieve, at least for many years, if at all. So the impacts of AI are going to be more nuanced. The key point, though, is a huge, huge number of jobs are going to be impacted. And they're going to be impacted by artificial intelligence, but also by other things. There's some important trends happening in the labor market as a whole. In most developed countries, we see a shift from traditional employment to many different kinds of non-traditional employment and to self-employment. Relatedly, we see the shift to the gig economy. So, where in the past, people might have dreamed of spending 40 years working for a big corporation or for a government, very few of us are going to be doing that in the future. I mean, I won't be living long enough to be doing that much in the future, but I mean, for the rest of you, think about that. We're in a different world. There'll be a growing need for skills, especially including digital skills, certainly including how to use artificial intelligence, generative AI, and the rest. We also see shifts in the labor market to much more work from home. And this, of course, was a transition that was very much accelerated by the COVID pandemic. And finally, the whole demographic shift, where we have an increasingly small labor force relative to the total population supporting a lot of retirees, also implies major changes needed in social welfare, social protection systems in developed countries, probably in all countries. So what needs to change? Well, first, education. Education clearly needs to put a greater focus on the skills that are relevant today, and also a much faster adaptation time to the changes in technology. But notably also, the fact that we won't be spending 40 years working in the same job or even the same profession clearly implies a need to shift to lifelong learning. A lot of us are going to have to change fields more than once. I've probably changed fields 4 or 5 times over my career, and I've gained, I think, each time. But this needs to become much more common, much more prevalent. Now, the fact that so many jobs are going to change means that social protection systems will need to cushion the shock to workers. We'll need to tide them over. We'll need to ensure that they have access to the kind of training that they need and that they can eat and have a roof over their heads while they're doing it. So social protection is going to have to accommodate the rapid shifts in the workforce that are implied. There's probably also a need to shift from what are called Bismarckian systems to Beveragian. In Bismarckian, a lot of your health insurance, retirement, and the rest is paid for by the employer. With the increasingly complex and less predictable kind of work arrangements, probably a shift to something more like the British National Health Service, where basically everybody is entitled to benefits and everybody somehow pays in, or perhaps it's supported out of general tax revenues. Something like that probably is going to have to happen. Now, mobility of workers is also important, and that means not only from job to job, but also from profession to profession, from mode of work to other mode of work, traditional employment to non-traditional to self-employment, back and forth. And somehow all of the benefits like retirement and health insurance have to carry across seamlessly, also with moves across geographical boundaries. So these are some of the changes that are needed. The European Union a few years ago created something called a pillar of social welfare, and it had a lot of the right ideas. There's been very little implementation to date. These are hard things to do, but I think they're going to be needed. And with that, I hope I haven't taken too long. Back to you, Mohammed, back to the moderator.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Scott. Frankly speaking, I will take that as a yes, that I'm going to keep my job as a spectrum manager, given that we have here few people also on in the audience from a spectrum management background. And I would like really to give a special welcome to Professor Veena Rawat. Professor Veena Rawat was chairwoman of WRC 2003. She's the first woman to get his PhD and be a professor in Canadian University, and one of the idols in spectrum management. It's a great honor that you are joining us. And now let's move to my friend, one also who's who's done his study in Carnegie Mellon on spectrum management, and that's how I got to know him. But then, a few years ago, he has shifted totally to artificial intelligence. He has established a lab, and in the last few years, he has done a lot of talks and seminars. And I hope, Professor Zaber, that you don't have any pressure, given that we are joined also by Professor Rohan here. Professor Rohan is a very well known in the telecom policy area. He has also established Linkria, which, if I recall, Zaber has to work with them, and I have the honor of attending two of their CPR conferences in the past. So, sorry again, Zaber, about that long introduction, but you did have a very catchy name for a seminar you did 2 months ago, and the title was very simple: should we blame artificial intelligence? And now it's my turn to ask you, should we blame artificial intelligence, and for what? Zaber? Zaber, you are muted.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so much. Thanks for the intro, Mohammed. It's really a pleasure and a kind of like daunting thing when I see all the big names here and talking in front of them. It's kind of like really like some pleasure and also a little bit scary as well. Now, yes, my work was mostly on spectrum management, but I was always a machine learner who basically trained to use data to find evidence to work on machine learning. So, from the very beginning, we are those people who wanted to actually use AI, a branch of AI, machine learning, for applied purposes. So it goes back from the days of my training. Now, when it comes to this, the idea of like, if AI is going to be a scary thing or not, I mean, first of all, the word AI, it's a business term. It was invented to make sure that people can actually think from the marketing perspective. I mean, it's a catchy word, phrase, so people would be attracted to hear about it. I mean, I prefer to use machine learning, and more often I prefer to use computational learning, which basically should be the case and when it comes to like talking about making machine mimic how humans solve problems. Now, if we try to blame AI, that would be a wrong thing to do. I mean, it's like blaming physics for creation of anything else, or I mean, or blaming language for for some folks are actually bad mouthing some other folks because there was somebody else invented language. So we shouldn't think in that way. But there is one thing from the blaming perspective that we need to actually think about, is that there is a huge what Scott was talking about, like the shift in tasks, how people work, how people actually do their job, and like how those will be actually changed as well. It will happen around the world, but it won't happen like in the same with the same pace as in the developing world and in the developed world. So while we might see agents driving taxis in Santa Monica, we won't see that in Dhaka or Delhi. So the reason is very simple, that the AI tools that we are actually designing, they are deep. They are based on deep learning mechanisms, which is a very technology, I mean microprocessor centric thing, which is because if you have more horsepower, you can actually get better results, and that means that you need more money. So better results, better data, better modeling will only happen if you have more money flushed in there. Now that the developing worlds do not have. So the problem with AI is that there will be a big, I mean, the divide, the digital divide, or whatever that we actually we are used to here, it will increase tremendously. So now when we are talking about agentic AI, like the AI that basically agents, like, you know, your chatbots or your conversational agents or anything, you know, that is working on behalf of you, like, you know, you are asking your Alexa, like, how's the weather, not, you know, not looking at through the window and seeing that, okay, there's snow. You are like more reliant on that machine, and then you have this, you know, all-purpose chatbots to actually write a letter for you. Some other chatbot will be writing an email for you, or like, you know, making coffee for you. So all those things are happening, and it will happen in like in 1 or 2 years, that we will be having multiple agents on our pockets. Now, but when I'm talking about that, it will be the case of developing world. I mean, and most of the cases, these things will be made and built by, you know, 2 or 3 big companies, and academia, even on those countries, will be, you know, leaving behind because they don't have that much money to actually even do research on those things. Now, the problem is like this deep learning based, you know, AI drive is like, you know, this digital divide. So we need to think about broader AI, like broad learning mechanisms, where we basically have, you know, AI designed from Africa, AI designed from Asia. I mean, so that we can actually have those contexts of those countries in. So that is the biggest challenge in AI. Now, just to give an example, honking in the subcontinent is somewhat like, you know, it's a way of like, you know, communication. We might think that, oh my God, the cars are honking here and there, but if you don't do that, people don't communicate. I mean, it is bad for a lot of people's ears, but, you know, that's how the culture is on the roads there. Now, if you have a self-driving car, if you want to have a Tesla there, and, you know, it doesn't even understand that honking thing, it will fail. Now, so that is the biggest challenge, and that is the biggest fear I have. And with that, you know, what Scott was talking about, this education, I'd say, like, you know, there's another problem with education here as well. Like, you know, it's not that, you know, there's not much of like, you know, going on in these countries. People are learning to, I mean, Python is the most used programming language in this part of the world. I mean, that means like people are actually using it, and people are using different type of tools to actually learn it. But what I'm trying to say here is that there is a huge lack of understanding of these technologies. People do not perceive these technologies as you know, they should be doing that. So because a lot of fear, they don't even know if they are like, you know, using it for what purpose. It is a good purpose or bad purpose. And so the learning part, as Scott was talking about, the lifelong learning, I would say, like, you know, even for breathing in this type of in this atmosphere, you really need to train yourself, and that is lacking in this part of the world. People do not have access to even learning what ChatGPT does, how ChatGPT actually works. So they're just like, you know, they're bombarded with these technologies, you know, through social media, etc. They're just using it. They don't even know, like, you know, what security and privacy issues are there. They have no idea of, like, you know, what end user license agreements are. And so, like, you know, they're really happy to click on any button to just get into and jump into those you know, tools and softwares. So this is what I think, you know, we should be actually really thinking of, apart from, you know, fearing AI. And the last important thing that I want to say is that regulation, even though we say that regulation is very important, we really need to think about like 2 important phenomena of regulation. One is regulatory capture, you know, which is an evident thing. And so, I mean, you know, we would see that in many powerful countries, you know, companies like the companies who are actually moving the research, moving the technologies further, they actually capture the regulators, and whatever the regulators are saying, even those countries are they're basically, you know, mirroring what those companies are telling them. Now, that is one problem. And then there is this problem of bootleggers and Baptists. So where, you know, there are people who want good stuff, They want us to actually, be safe and etc. And they want, regulations to be proper, etc. And they support this type of thing. But, by doing so, they're basically, helping these organizations to actually even capture the regulators more in some cases. Because, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have regulations, but we really need to think and have massive communication and talk so that people get understanding of what is it about, are they safe or not, and after that we open it up in such a way that there is no chance of apparent capture. So yeah, so that's what basically, that's the fear I have.
So
Back to you, Mohammed.
for those who have joined late, I've asked Zaber about should we blame artificial intelligence? And I think a short answer would be no, right? So, all right. So let's move on to our next panelist, Dr. Rami Ahmed. Dr. Rami Ahmed, as I mentioned in the beginning, he used to be my boss. That tells you something. He's the one who nominated me to be a senior member of the IEEE, and for that I'm very grateful. But most importantly, Dr. Rami is one of the very few, at least in the region, who have been involved in the development of regulations and establishment of smart cities in practice. And now, more recently, he has moved to be in charge of big part of cybersecurity in Egypt. I'm not an expert, but I guess my question to you, Dr. Rami, how we can, I don't know, make the best of artificial intelligence technologies when we are developing smart cities, given that at least here in Egypt, we have an interest in that. We're trying to build an ideal smart city model in the new capital.
Thank you, Dr. Morazi. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this esteemed panel. It's always a pleasure, my dear, to be working with you, and absolutely a pleasure. So back to your question, of course, the topic of AI is not new, and I think I share many of the key ideas shared by my fellow panelists. AI has been around for more than, I would say, 50 years, more than 50, 60 years, since the 50s in the last century, I think 1954. Around that particular time frame, there were many numerous efforts in the academia and in the industry introducing some form or some elements of AI. AI is not a single discipline. It's a lot. It depends on the perspective or the angle from which you are looking. Are you looking to enhance the way perhaps a particular machine would infer, would take a decision? Are you looking to mimic human behavior in a way? Are you interested in mimicking how the human acts, how the human moves, or even better, how the human thinks, how the brain works? And there's a great deal of an algorithmic class. We call it meta-heuristics or heuristics, meta-heuristics in particular, like genetic algorithms and meta-heuristic algorithms and particle swarm optimization, etc. These type of algorithms try to mimic the way either living beings operate or living beings function in a way. So again, the AI has been around for many, many years. When it comes to its potential use cases, of course, and particularly from a smart city, smart sustainable cities perspective, it's a lot. It's endless potential applications, endless potential use cases. So I'm going to divide my answer into two parts. First, what are the potential applications? And then to your core question, how can we make use of it? In terms of applications, there are numerous application domains. And if we think about a particular city as a system of systems or a particular complex ecosystem where you have particular verticals communicating with each other, interacting with different things inside the environment, then the AI can be divided into numerous aspects. There are some particular use cases relevant to some particular vertical segments. Taking, for example, the traffic and mobility management within a particular smart city, one very critical issue that city planners and urban planners are usually focused on or looking for an answer for that particular problem is how can they optimize the road traffic network of course, to reduce congestion, to improve the traffic flow, to potentially deviate traffic away from congested locations. Perhaps there's a particular accident or a particular incident inside your road network that would prevent the smooth flow. In that particular situation, you need some form of situational awareness within your overall network. You achieve situational awareness by means of different type of technologies, mostly sensory technologies, CCTV cameras embedded with an embedded form of intelligence whereby events can be detected, objects can be recognized, and then there's a higher layer of decision making whereby you can then control the urban traffic controllers or the urban traffic signals in order to maneuver the traffic outside the problematic zone. So this is one potential area of application. Another potential area of application, also very critical in a smart city perspective, is the energy sector. We all know, folks work in the energy domain, that you need to balance always, you need to match the amount of supply and consumption. You cannot generate too much energy and then that particular energy needs to be consumed totally equal to the amount of generation or to the amount of the supply side. If you didn't do that, if you didn't manage that particular balancing relationship between the supply and the demand or the supply and the consumption, you might end up with instabilities in your network. And accordingly, and since you are in a living environment, a city is a complex ecosystem, it is very hard to anticipate the demand in advance. And that creates quite a lot of challenges for the electricity companies, for the smart grid operators. You rely on, of course, on different type of technologies, different type of, we call it DCS, of course, smart grid and other forms of metering technologies, whereby you try to monitor real-time consumption of the electrical loads, and then you try to balance somehow the energy supply. If there is a sudden surge in the demand, you have to meet that surge. Otherwise, you might end up with a particular fault in your energy distribution network. And accordingly, AI can be used somehow if you placed your meters and if you monitored some very specific key performance indicators, some very specific KPIs. You monitored the exact usage, the exact consumption of the energy in a particular distribution network, in a particular neighborhood. And then with some form of historical modeling, you would be able then to anticipate the potential demand at a particular point in time, at a particular location. And this information is very, very useful for the city planners, and particularly for the energy companies, to optimize, of course, using, again, sophisticated AI-based algorithms to match that surging demand. We can, of course, go and list many other application domains in many different areas as well. For example, security. Again, security is very important application domain. It is basically collating different sources of information, different sources of data. And the beauty of AI is that it would allow you to consume and then take action on a humongous amount of big data in near real time. And this is, of course, one challenging aspect of it. So on your second part, or on the second part of the question, how can we make use of it? How can we reap the benefit of AI in this very complex ecosystem? First, you need to develop the proper level of architecture, the proper architecture that should be placed in such a very complex ecosystem. Some AI systems would need some form of edge capability. You need to push the intelligence a little bit closer to the end user in order to overcome the challenges associated with latency and because obviously, if you are going to query the AI system more frequently, you need to get a little bit closer to the end customer. And in that particular perspective, this particular architecture is totally in line again with the 5G ecosystem. In a way, we all know that the 5G ecosystem or the 5G potential use cases are basically divided into three key families of use cases. One of them is the ultra reliable and low latency applications and the massive Internet of Things or machine to machine applications. In that particular type of use cases, you need two things. Pushing intelligence closer to the edge means that you need somehow to rely on regional data centers or even neighborhood data centers, fog computing, some form of cloud computing architecture that is closer to the use case, closer to the end customer. This is one point. And the second point, in order to meet that particular surge of potentially demand, potentially high level of exchange of data and data processing and data management, then you need, of course, a very high-speed infrastructure, again, to be available to your end customer. So in terms of what you need, again, to summarize, in terms of what you need to design the proper architecture. The proper requirements, it depends, of course, on your use case. If we are going to employ 5G related use cases, then you need to make sure, of course, you're a spectrum expert, that the proper infrastructure, the proper resources, whether that is through fiber to the side infrastructure modalities, the proper foundational infrastructure, ICT foundational infrastructure in terms of proper data centers, fog computing capabilities, cloud computing capabilities closer to the edge. That is one particular pillar of the whole story. A second important and equally important pillar is the data part. Without data, without the availability of well-proven, well-sourced data that would be useful for the AI to function, you end up with absolutely nothing. It is absolutely useless if you are going to adopt a particular use case that would eventually need some form of training, some form of tweaking in order to function, in order for that particular application to function properly. It needs proper training or proper time. We call it the time to optimize the particular use case in the field. And in that particular angle, the availability of data definitely is something that we need to look at. The third pillar, and I will stop here also to give room for more questions again during this particular panel, is the elements of the availability of proper safeguards. And safeguards that would entail proper regulatory frameworks to address any associated risks associated, of course, with the use and adoption of AI in some particular use cases, safeguards or guarantees that would allow the market to consume AI-based related services. That is in a way also related to my previous point, the availability of data. You need to enact laws, you need to enact regulations that would promote the potential safe use of data in a way, open data frameworks, and of course, you need to have the proper tools to assess the implications on privacy and privacy implications associated with the heavy use of the AI in a typical smart city scenario. I will stop here and I'll give you back the microphone, Morazi.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rami. I know it's very difficult to stop you whenever I mention smart cities. I know it's your passion, but thank you so much. Our last but not least panelist, my dear friend, Mr. George Salama. George, perhaps 15 years ago, he was focusing on internet governance issue. He was doing his master degree. He finished his master degree, started his PhD, and then he has moved to do telecom policy in the Gulf region. And then he was responsible of Twitter in perhaps 30 countries, if I'm not mistaken, George, for almost 8 years. And suddenly, we did have this conversation perhaps a few years ago. George decided to leave Twitter. And I told him, are you crazy? And he told me, like, you will see. He has successfully established his own group, doing some consultancy in the region. But most importantly, a few months ago, he has established what is called Artificial Intelligence Council. And his main partner or co-founder in that is engineer Nasser Rajdi. And Nasser Rajdi is very well known to people working in spectrum management and a well-respected name in the ITU. And he's one of the leaders and godfathers of space policy in UAE. So, George, you got my attention. Something is going on. I know you wouldn't invest your time and effort in something in a topic like artificial intelligence unless it has a big potential. So my question to you, why artificial intelligence? Why now? Would it really change our lives?
Well, it's already changing it, Mohammed. And first, allow me to thank you. Thank you all for the opportunity to be with you here today with such a distinguished panel discussing such important and timely manner critical conversation. So basically, I mean, being the last speaker here, lots of points that has been raised by esteemed speakers has been already covered, but it's super interesting. Number one, Mohammed, don't worry, you will not be losing your job. In fact, AI will make it much more easier and much more efficient when it comes to spectrum management. Second, I recall. Maybe this panel is close to my heart, having Dr. Muhammad and Dr. Rami, former colleague at my years at NTRA, and I remember very well, maybe like 20 years back, I was working as well. Dr. Rami was my manager, and I remember my first day at NTRA. He was doing impressive work in the digital transformation of the day-to-day businesses at NTRA using IBM Lotus Dominus server, if you recall, Dr. Rami. And in parallel, I was working as well. And Dr. Muhammad, I was working with him closely on a monthly basis, preparing the old CD-ROM for the Spectrum Management Committee. I believe all these jobs now could be easily replaced by AI tools. So back again to your question, and I have like 4 main points focusing on the AI opportunities and 4 points focusing on the AI challenges. And I would love to mention as well from an academic perspective, Engineer Zaber, he mentions that he doesn't like the term of AI or artificial intelligence, which somehow I tend to agree, because I recall 20 plus years back, my graduation project, I studied computer science and electronics at the American University in Cairo. It was data mining tool that works on data stored on XML format using fuzzy logic and decision trees algorithms. And I recall that one question that if we have more time to enhance this tool, what you will be using your time in. And I recall very well, I answered that if we have more time, we'll work on providing the algorithm with more data. And because this is how it works, the more data that you feed in the system, the better results you will have. So to cut it short, on the AI opportunities, I have 4 main opportunities. Number one is the use of AI for inclusive economic growth. And there is a tremendous potential to bridge the economic discrepancy by enabling localized solutions tailored to developing economies and underserved regions. We see many success stories on AI-powered microfinance platforms. When it comes again to, for example, agriculture tool, these AI systems fosters productivity and help in the economic diversification, and most importantly, create new opportunities for small and medium enterprises. Number 2 is something that is trending now, and we will be witnessing its development soon enough, if not already, which is AI-powered digital public infrastructure, DPI. And AI comes at the backbone of the digital public infrastructure. And surprisingly, we found that it helps in the UN Sustainability Development Goal implementation. We are talking here again back to smart cities, digital global identities powered by AI tools and blockchain networks. So basically, we are encouraging policymakers here and governments to prioritize scalable AI solutions that enhancing the public welfare. Number 3 on the opportunities, again, when it comes to the climate change. So AI can be used as a catalyst for climate action. There are great potential opportunities in tackling climate change issues through predictive analytics and energy optimization, smart grid systems, and the role of AI models in climate risk modeling and resources conservation efforts is addressing one of the most or the biggest humanity challenges recently, and it's again in alignment with the UN sustainability goals. Number 4, and the last opportunity that I see at Salama Group and the AI Universal Council is the use of AI in driving innovation across several vectors. So AI has been has a transformative impact on diverse sectors. So let's focus, for example, or let's take an example on the healthcare. AI-driven technologies are enabling precision medicine, transforming diagnostics, personalizing patient care, and it's saving years of medicine and drug researches in lab that can be done in weeks, if not days.
Again, in telecom sector, AI can be definitely or is already used to optimize network, enhance connectivity, enabling smart systems for billions on a global level. So the opportunities are massive across several sectors, and but again, with such opportunities and progress comes again some challenges. I will quickly go through four main challenges from my point of view. Number one is the algorithmic accountability, and we propose to have like a legal type of framework. So beyond the technical transparency, it is important as well to explore that development of algorithmic accountability laws or legal frameworks where organizations are legally required to demonstrate how their AI systems makes decisions. This includes, for example, providing independent trusted audits or explainability metrics, compliance certifications, building public trust and ensuring that the AI system follow ethical standards, particularly in high-stake domains, like I mentioned earlier, in healthcare, in finance, in law enforcement is a must. It is not an option. The second challenge that I see is the data sovereignty. And beyond data sovereignty, let me name it digital sovereignty. It is important that there is a growing need for digital sovereignty. Countries need to control over their own AI data, infrastructure, development ecosystems, without being overly dependent on global big tech giants. This will require much more investment in building local AI talents, local infrastructure, and enabling the AI ecosystem on a national level. Number three is the AI role in misinformation and disinformation. So definitely bad actors are using AI tools to manipulate the system and create deepfakes, promote misinformation campaigns and biased narratives against minorities in some cases. And this requires, again, robust regulatory framework. And in addition, or in parallel, is to raise the societal awareness, call to collaboration on a global solution through UN systems. Number four, and the last one on the challenges side, is bridging the knowledge gap. So now, like we mentioned, now tech companies or big tech companies are developing tools that developing economies and developing countries are using those tools without having a real calibers or talents on a national level. It's important to propose capacity building initiatives, AI literacy programs, and work in public-private partnerships for educating and accessibility for local talents to innovation and problem solving. So basically, those are the four main opportunities and challenges. And allow me to share with you on here in the chat box our latest effort on Salama Group. We built the AI corner where you can find, number one, an open letter that is calling for a safer, responsible AI development. We have already collected hundreds of signatures from different parts of the world. We have what we are calling AI flashes, which are dedicated studies on different AI-related subject matters, and a link to the AI Universal Council that I co-founded with engineer Nasser Al-Rajdi here in UAE. The work that here we are doing either through Salama Group or the AI Universal Council is we are aiming to advocate for the adoption of a balanced approach for responsible AI adoption. Big tech companies, like I mentioned, let me end by and conclude my intervention here by this important point that big tech companies hold the power to shape the public discourse. And with that power comes a profound responsibility to ensure that every voice is heard fairly, responsibly, and truthfully. And AI, it's not about the machine or algorithm anymore. It's about people. It's about the future we want to build together. And we'll mention a quote by my favorite Albert Einstein. He mentions that whoever is careless with the truth in small matters cannot be trusted with important matters. So let's ensure that this future is one of progress, equity, that we share all prosperity on our equal roles and mandates. I will stop here and thank you again very much for the kind invite and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George. Always a pleasure. I usually prefer to keep our webinars short. Now we come over the hour, so perhaps we can take a question from the audience. I've noticed a question in the chat, and I've give you a warning. I'm not an AI expert. I cannot even understand the question. So perhaps, Mohammed, if you can yourself ask our prestigious panelists, and any one of them is free to answer if needed. Mohammed?
Okay, thank you, Mugazi, for giving me the space to explain my question here. So it's about how to ensure through the regulatory framework a fair digital economy in the existing of AI, or how to ensure that the AI benefits is for all. So my point here is back to the fact that most of the AI models are trained using the human generated data in indirect or indirect way. And let me give an simple, very simple example here. For example, so in my car, I have a very simple features which is based on AI, this travel assistance. And I got to know that the company is collecting the data and my driving attitude, and also from the camera in the car to train and enhance this AI model. And then, of course, they give me an upgrade to the software for the features, but they also use the enhanced model and they are sealing it, and they gain millions of dollars. So how to ensure that there is like a return or share this kind of revenue with the owners of the data that used for training this model. So I'm not like asking for a kind of revenue, but how countries can gain benefits from using people data by different companies to enhance people lifestyle. So I think we should have some policy studies in the related regulatory organization about how to ensure a fair digital economy and AI benefits for all. So as data used for gaining money by the companies behind the AI is originally a human data. So I hope you got my point here. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Very quickly, please, for our esteemed panelists, in a minute or two, if you want to respond to that question,
Actually,
please go
I'd
ahead.
like to take the floor for this question.
تفضل.
Thank you, Muhammad, and thank Muhammad Hafiz for the question. Actually, your question is very important and highlighting a complex issue in the world of AI, and it will have such a reputation in the coming days and years. That one of the important challenges that we will have is identifying data ownership. Now, it's now easy to trace some data sources because it's known in the future there will be a mixed data between original data and machine generated data, and it will be complex to have a discrimination between the data sources. Now, much of the outcomes of the original data is coming from the public domain, like books, articles, social media articles, whatever written, that now it's contributing to the value of the individuals using the training sets from these individuals. Now, the other challenge that will come in the coming years, that what is the quantifying value of the data? Now, what is the price of a comment? What is the price of the social media post that it will be used to train a model? Now, and how the return of this income will come to the persons, not to the companies and social media providers, and how the AI model training will be done in the coming years. There will be fair compensation and some challenges for the users. And the third important point that about data exploitation. Now, that individuals and communities are sharing their data, and especially in the developed countries, and they have their data exploited without receiving a fair share of the benefits generated by AI. Some countries are just generating data on the social media in any way that generating data, and they are not mature in the AI domain, so they can negotiate for a compensation. And this caused that the ownership is lost in this case. So, and one more point, which is very important, that concentration of power, that a few large companies are controlling the AI models and data, and they are using this to train their models, and they are getting benefits, and they are monetizing, and their economic power is increasing. And some other small companies or users or individual, they are not getting any return of that training that is being done. So this is a challenging issue. And as we mentioned, as I mentioned at the beginning, and the esteemed speakers mentioned, that the AI domain and regulations becoming complex day by day, and it needs potential solutions. Like one of the important points that it needs to be done, the data cooperation, that there should be a cooperation between the AI developers, the social media companies,
Engineer
the
Belal,
AI companies that are
all right.
Yes, again. One more thing that is very important, that the data trust. Now, we need to have a trust, to build a trust in the organizations that using our data, and they are managing our data on behalf of our individuals. And there should be an ethical use. So the challenge now is not a matter of data generation, it's the ethical use of data and data governance and personal data protection. These are triple constraints that we need to think about them in the coming days. And one more thing, that what is called micropayments. What does it mean? That we should develop a way to track the use of individuals' data in AI training, and to set something called micropayments for those users, so they could be compensated in a way. And one important thing about open data sources and models, and how to promote open data sources, and anyone can contribute to this data, so we can do the democratization to access AI data and reduce concentration of power on reduce the power in the few companies, in the hand of a few companies like giants. We need to get rid of giants, because if we don't have data democratization, this means will be slaves under these big giants of data. This all can be solved by proper regulation and proper policies. And we cannot say that there is one regulation that can solve all the issues. We need to have collaborative regulation. We need to have proper policies to be updated from time to time. And we need also to update the ethical frameworks to handle all difficulties that could appear. So this regulation part will be dynamic. It will be evolving. It will be moving forward as soon as the technology itself is improving. So we need to update our ethical frameworks and keep our privacy and regulations and policies up to date to match the demand in the field. So this means we need to think in different way. We need to raise awareness. We need to present solutions. We need to call for actions such as this meeting. This meeting is open eyes of people about upcoming challenges, about upcoming risks. And at the same time, it shows the upcoming benefits of using AI. And the esteemed speakers, everyone showed a useful case about AI in jobs, in healthcare, in education, and in different fields. So such important meetings will focus and keep eye on the upcoming developments and upcoming challenges and ethical concerns and privacy concerns. And this will help even to show the case for the regulators, for the operators, for the developers, and even for the end users to take care about what's coming and to be ready for the next step in AI regulations.
Thanks so much, Engineer Belal.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I can
So,
add
Tfaddal. Yes, please go ahead, Rob.
very quickly. I know that you're running out of time, but just to also share my 2 cents on this particular topic. Of course, this is this is a very difficult question. In a sense, it's a very, very controversial topic. And you have to expect, Muhammad, thank you first, Muhammad Hafiz, for the question. You have to expect that very difficult to come with a particular conclusion on this topic as we speak. There are mainly two key views or two key elements here. First, as Belal said, the notion of data ownership, who owns the data, and there are some voices in the industry and in the public policy arena which calls for some form of compensation models. We're talking about tools like data royalties or some specific funds that should be paid by the companies who are going to use the data sourced from public sources. And that particular fund can then be used to do all sorts of things, from capacity building. You can classify it under CSR, corporate social responsibility per se, these type of approaches. The second view, and I will not detail, of course, that first pillar. There are so many things that can be said under this pillar. But the second, also interesting view in this particular endless debate is that in order for the AI to function, you need a huge amount of processing power. Processing power that the data owners do not possess. Processing powers by means of massive data centers, massive capacities. You're talking about a huge electricity bill that you have to maintain. And accordingly, in a way or another, you cannot really claim that a particular end customer should be in a way compensated for something that he did not exert effort to provide. So there are different views, different models, and it all boils down again to the issue of intellectual property and how you govern that within that particular space, especially since the current legal systems are a little bit ambiguous when it defines the different roles and the different rights associated with each stakeholder. And I will stop here.
Thanks so much, Dr. Rami Scott. You want to comment on that?
Actually, a more general comment. I agree. First of all, thank you so much for the invitation to this very interesting panel, and thank you so much to the panelists for very thoughtful remarks. Really, on this whole topic of regulation, I just wanted to point out that we're witnessing, I believe, a real sea change that I think most experts haven't appreciated. I think implicit in all of the remarks that we've heard is that there's a need for a coherent approach as much as possible worldwide on how we handle digitalization in general, artificial intelligence in particular. The US elections last month are going to make that somewhere between difficult and impossible. Just yesterday, we saw Meta announce that it's going to stop content moderation for US customers, initially not for Europeans, because Europe has laws in place that they have to comply with. But the possibility of convergence is greatly reduced. And the reason, of course, for Meta doing this is that they don't want to butt heads with the Trump administration, which wants to have a free hand in disseminating its propaganda worldwide. So I believe we're going to have an enormous amount of headbutting worldwide, trying to come up with common standards, common ethical approaches. Again, I think this hasn't worked its way into the debate because it's too new, but I think it's going to be hugely important and hugely difficult. I think we're entering a very difficult period. As an American, it's painful for me to say that.
For many years, you know that I thought you are German or European. So, but please forgive my ignorance. So,
well, I'll be a dual citizen soon.
Well, congratulations in advance. I'm not surprised. Perhaps it's too late even. So I know we have overcrossed the hour by 20 minutes now. I encourage you to contact our esteemed panelist after that. I've learned 2 or 3 things today, but most importantly, as mentioned by Scott, I'm gonna keep my job. So thank you so much for this. I wish you a very blessing 2025. And this meeting is recorded. We're going to share, as I mentioned in the beginning, an overview of the discussion in our forthcoming issue to be published in January. And this is an open invitation for all of you. If you have 2 or 3 pages on any trendy telecom policy topic to submit, GTPRN welcome your submission. With that, thank you so much, and let's meet in other opportunities in the future, inshallah. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to all. Goodbye.